As I remember, Rod Steiger came to the picture a little late. He was in Europe and doing another film, and they tried to get George C. Scott for this film. When they mentioned Steiger, I thought that would be great if we could get him, because to me, he kind of was the epitome of that Southern, overbearing, kind of tough, passionate character that Gillespie was. And so he read the script in Europe.
And I remember the first day of shooting, in the script it had the sheriff chewing gum.
That came about because I suggested, like, Bull Connor, which was a kind of famous redneck sheriff that I patterned him after, was kind of overweight and had a big cigar.
And I said, Norman, come on. It's bad enough we got chucker boots. I'm overweight, 5,000 pounds. Chewing gum's a bit of cliche. He's, well, do me a favor. He has a good charm about it. Try it anyway. And I realized when I was upset, he'd chew fast. When he was thinking I could communicate with the audience here, I chew slower. And then I said, wait a minute, okay, so I'm in different scenes. You know how I feel by how I'm chewing, you know.
I don't think he knew what to make of Steiger. I think there was this kind of tension between them, which I, of course, encouraged, because I felt that was healthy as far as their performances went. And Rod in this scene is just wonderful, a little over the top. Rod's always a little over the top. I was always pulling Rod down and down and down.
Oh, really? Well, tell Norman what they call over the top someday is the reticence of people to express themselves truly in the society they live in. I go over every once in a while, I'm sure, but that's all part of exploring. Everybody finds their own way, so to speak, though the principles are the same. To personally identify to the fictitious circumstance that a play guide gives you. Once I got the idea in my head with Gillespie that he was a great and lonely gunfighter, and Sidney was a great and lonely gunfighter who happened to be of another color. And of course, I understand loneliness. I was on my own when I was about 10 or 11. And if somebody asked me in that picture, what did Gillespie want? He wanted to be left the fuck alone and chew his gum. I didn't ask for this. Shit. But what happens in that picture is interesting because it's not done intellectually. It's done instinctively, which is the hardest way to create everything. As these two gunfighters work together, they begin to realize this guy's pretty much a man, isn't he? I better take a second look at the son of a bitch. He's not bad. So they became, out of respect for their manhood or their professionalism, their independence, their sense of directness, the refusal to lie, the refusal to be insulted. So they were brothers that way. And they begin to understand each other there.
I was shocked at the first showing of this film in San Francisco because there were so many laughs. I mean, the air conditioner doesn't work, and this doesn't work. And when Steiger asks him what he does up in little old Philadelphia to earn that kind of money, and when he says, I'm a police officer, the audience went crazy. They started to hoot and holler and scream and yell. And I was appalled. I thought, oh my God, I thought they were laughing at the film. They weren't laughing at the film. They were laughing at the situation. That Warren Oates had gone and arrested a black police officer. And that's how dumb you are. And they were laughing at Steiger's humiliation, after treating Sidney in this condescending, racist way, to see him look at that badge. And that also is a terrific piece of acting. The realization, these guys were wonderful together.
Norman Jewison. He's one of the few people still left. He's one of the few directors who has the knack to try to make you hear something and learn something as to the necessary freedoms of all human beings, and he'll make a comment. I hate to use the word socially because right away people think something. But he entertains you first. So we got along great, me with my chewing. And of course, he and Sidney Poitier and Haskell Wexler were always saying, "Hey, Rod, come on." We were down, no, we weren't in the South. I'll tell you that story, too. "Let's have some more pecan pie." And all of a sudden I realized this son of a bitch was trying to make me heavier for the film because Norman liked to see my stomach go over the belt, and I caught him on that. Anyway, I weighed about 230, but I'm always much heavier. I'm so solid, solid fat. Anyway, 164 on the left side.
And I love the relationship between Steiger and Warren Oates. Every time Warren Oates goes to do something, Steiger will smack his hand or something. I mean, there's a little bit of humor in all this. And I love these side angles on Steiger, which shows his gut and how he was willing to let it kind of hang out, It's so honest. He's such an honest actor.
The other side of the story of shooting The Heat of the Night was that when we went to Tennessee, we were supposed to shoot 4 days. I don't know if you can use this or not, but it's an interesting story. And I noticed Sidney was getting very uptight. Not with the people, and it was beginning to affect his concentration, which is the essence of anything, creating or what have you. And it turned out, because of the attitude of the people in Tennessee, the part that fought for the Civil War, I didn't know, half fought for the North, half fought for the South. We would go in the restaurant, they wouldn't say anything, but they put the plate down so loud and rudely they didn't have to say anything. Because I said, "I'll do this picture, but I got to have my suite next to Sidney's suite with the door open in between when we go down there." Well, he was a good friend of mine. So finally, Sidney, I wasn't there, but evidently talked to Norman and said, "We got to go someplace else." But we went down to Tennessee. We're supposed to go down to the cotton fields of Tennessee for 4 days. I had my suite next to Sidney's with the door open in between. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. There comes a knock on the door. And, "I'm looking for my wife," this voice says through this. "I'm looking for my wife." So I go to the door. I have no clothes on at all. I open the door, and there's a kid about 17 with a double-barrel shotgun, partially drunk, completely in tears, and the gun is shaking. I think, Jesus, suppose he pulls the trigger by accident. "I'm sorry, I'm looking for more. I have to look." I said, "Come in and look." And I'm praying, "Please don't see the open door." "And Mr. Steiger, I'm sorry. What's that door?" I said, "That's Mr. Sidney Poitier's suite." "Well, I have to go in there." I said, "Well, would you let me go in first? I'll wake him up, okay?" And I go in and I'm praying, "Let there be no woman in this room of any color. Because this kid will see anything move that looks feminine. He's going to blow Sidney away, right?" And I said, "Sidney?" He said, "Well," I said, "We got a visitor." He said, "What the hell are you talking?" I said, "There's a kid here with the gun." Well, So there he is in his boxer shorts, and there I am. I finally put on a bathrobe. This guy went through everything, under the bed, everything, and he started to apologize, crying more. And finally he left, and Sidney and I were exhausted. But of course, idiot me, I said, "Geez, if I had to do that scene and cry for 20 minutes, they'd say I was overacting, wouldn't they?" This kid never stopped. It was amazing. So that didn't help Sidney very much, or myself for that matter, "I'm looking for my wife." No, what happened, we were doing this scene, we rehearsed it, but I think I said, "I don't know," in the scene. I'm not quite sure because I didn't know. And I said to myself, "Well, what the hell? I don't know. Gillespie doesn't have to know." I said, "I don't know." That was my toughest line in the whole picture. What are you going to do? I don't know.
Oh, this was the scene when he got out and slammed this door and came at Sidney. I shot this out of sequence, and Sidney was really worried about this scene. He thought Steiger was way over the top. I had to reassure Sidney that I was going to sit on top of Steiger's performance. Rod and I have worked together since, and for some reason, I love working with Steiger. And he can be so tough at times to work with as a director. But I adore him. Because I think he gives you something different every time. And they really played with each other here.
Sidney, he's a fine actor. He should be even considered better than that because of the social pressures and that he had to deal with while trying to create. Sidney told me, this is years ago, he hated it when people start to write, he was the prince of his people. He said, I can't get sick. I'm the prince of the people. I can't go to the bathroom. I'm the prince of the people. You understand? They put this image on him, for Christ's sake. He couldn't yell, couldn't swear, couldn't do anything, because he was the prince of the black race. It used to drive him crazy, because it made his life so confining, and he handled it very well. And I think one of the reasons he handled it well, because he came from the islands. So had he been born in Memphis or something, he might have had an anger in him. I mean, he had the anger anyway after a while, but he could still, this is a kid whose father and mother were tomato farmers. Used to sleep in Grand Central Station and learned to speak by listening to the announcers on the radio and the news. So you got to stand up when he comes in the room.
And this scene with Sidney and him with the bottle, as I remember, was a good dramatic scene and amplified Rod Steiger's character very well.
He really did grow into the character, and I think this scene in the house reveals so much about both of them that we didn't know. There's a vulnerability here, and Rod allows himself to get so vulnerable, and then the moment he gets the tiniest bit of pity from an African American, he gets angry because he's never been in that position before. And he realizes he revealed something to a black man that he would never normally reveal. And it makes him angry. And of course, Sidney immediately knows. But I really like this scene because I think it's so human. There's a tenderness between them that I like. You can see a respect between them until, of course, Rod freaks out. But of course, I had him juicing pretty good, so I wanted to make sure the audience understood that he had had a few drinks, and that also affected his behavior.
And to me, the best scene in the picture is when they're in the house. I remember that because we were going to shoot it, and it started to rain, and of all the houses, somebody had chosen a house with a tin roof. So all you heard was, we couldn't shoot, we couldn't get the sound. So we had to wait, and we all sat outside in the car until the rain stopped. And while we were in the car, it came out that Sidney didn't like the scene the way it was. I didn't like the scene the way it was. Norman wasn't too keen on it. So we kind of improvised, and then we shot it. And while we were shooting, I insult him when I said, listen, boy. He said, don't call me boy. Please don't call me boy, which we had done. And then, as I'm sitting there, he's talking to me, and I'm saying, because I always tried to keep them equal. If they were hurt, they were equally hurt. You know? What the hell am I going to get out of this? I mean, he can't call me boy. It doesn't... And all of a sudden I realized from the way he was talking to me, I said, wait a minute, don't pity me. You understand? I don't need your pity. That matched the boy. And that balance had to be kept through the entire picture. When I did Heat of the Night, I didn't know that this film would have such vibrations over the years, over a couple of decades. I knew it was going to be a good film, I thought, from the script, but I didn't know it would be of some importance socially. I didn't think of it that way because you can't act and be a politician at the same time, that's for sure.